ruling African National Congress meeting up with its allies on Friday and over the weekend, and we've heard that now they're planning to broaden the Reserve Bank's mandate further than just inflation and targeting economic growth as well. Do you think this is a good move?
Well, we had expected it because the focus on the ANC manifesto was around job creation, particularly decent jobs. So therefore, we're expecting them to include employment as well as output, so that the Reserve Bank now looks at three things: that is inflation, output and employment, and thereafter make a decision. What we'd like to see, however, is a broader engagement. We don't expect the Minister of Finance, Mr. Koram, to rush and write a letter to Reserve Bank Governor, Ms. Marcus. So we want to engage on the debate so that we can all input and then come to a conclusive and inclusive decision around the mandate of the Reserve Bank.
Well, you're saying that employment and output needs to be included. How will they include this? Because we know inflation targeting, it's all about interest rates. And then obviously when you look at economic growth, it's also ensuring that we have a very viable and suitable inflation targets and also interest rates so that we do not hamper these. But how do you include employment and output?
Well, it's a well-known style which can span used as well as now Benanke, where you basically look in the interest of the broader economy, particularly given South Africa's challenges on unemployment, that for them to include employment and growth, because we've seen that under Mbeki, economic growth led to job creation, and therefore if you exclude output, you find yourself that inflation is down, unemployment continues to worsen, and therefore growth also is compromised. So it's much more understandable. I think the challenge, though, is whether the allies as well as the business sector will support it, because we still want to see an engagement in the business sector, because at the end of the day, people that create jobs are business.
Looking at the rand, because obviously it's also been something that has been spoken about quite extensively, do you think that that is also going to be thrown in terms of broadening the Reserve Bank's mandate?
I hope not, because then you start having too many variables. I think for me, to include employment and output, it's already too many variables, and so that create a lot of instability, because we'll never know which one now they're going to be looking at. So the rand debate is useful, but to an extent that, you know, we're trying to support, make our currency more competitive and create credibility and sustainability in the long term for our producers, because the volatility is really hurting everyone.
Well, the rand currently at 7.42 to the dollar. In terms of intervening and getting it weaker from these levels, Lumkile, from your side, what would you be doing?
I won't be doing much at the moment. I think with the growth coming out from Europe and also Asia, we've seen this morning Asia as well. So I will watch the events. The opportunities will come when the rand starts running, and we know the rand, when it runs very fast.
Lumkile, looking at also the fact that we saw Jacob Zuma backing Trevor Manuels Green Paper, and if you think this is a good idea as well, do you think that the trade unions and the allies out there must be upset about this, because we know that they were actually pushing for Ibrahim Patel to be part and obviously head of the National Planning Commission?
Well, we're disappointed because we expected him to have taken that decision about 3 months ago. Mr. Zuma must lead. He's the president. He must lead, he must make mistakes, and he must learn from them. We cannot continue running our country through committees of the Tripartite Alliance. The South African people have spoken. They've appointed the ANC to govern. They must govern. They must stop going back and leading from Luthuli House. One government to lead directly from the chambers of government.
ANC has also been opposed to this 45% tariff increase for the next 3 years that has been proposed by Eskom, and we know that there's a lot of troubles going on there. Firstly, let's just take a look at all the issues there. We've got Mpho Makwana, he's the acting CEO and chairman of Eskom, and probably will be so for the next 90 days. On the other end, we heard that Public Enterprises Minister Barbara Hogan would like to see Bobby Godsell back, but he's out of the country.
Well, I mean, for me, it's a lost case, really. It indicates a shareholder that at least is still indecisive, because Mr. Godsell was brought in to try and stem the tide at Eskom. However, the fact of the events, what you heard about what had happened, undermines really what we would have liked to see: strong leadership from the shareholder, supporting the board and making sure that Eskom focuses on it. But I'm very disappointed the ANC wants to revise the 45% increase. That 45% is very critical in the sense that it will make core generation much more affordable. So we're seeing a lot of companies now discussing alternative power. More important is that a lot of us don't trust Eskom. So to an extent that the state has failed to create competition in the energy generation sector, we're quite worried that any policy instability and local focus on direction may create more instability in terms of creating jobs, in terms of output, and therefore undermine what the ANC believes in creating employment and improving lives of people.
This week, we've got that MPC rate decision, and we also have retail sales set to be released. Your views on both?
Retail sales continues to worsen because there's no money from consumers, and secondly, we expect the new governor, not to clean with a new broom, but to continue in the wave of Mr. Mboni, keeping them steady until the decision around employment and output is finalized.
Well, it's interesting, retail sales contracting by 7% in the previous reading that we had, and obviously painting quite a dire picture. On the other end, we've got unemployment rising. Surely these factors should be big enough to push for a 0.5 percentage point cut.
No ways. We shouldn't do that. What we need to do is decisive leadership. We need all these things that the ANC was talking about over the weekend. We need them implemented decisively. We cannot continue having too many discussions taking place outside the sphere for a public. We need leadership, even if whatever they support needs to be clear so the private sector can get direction and we can get on with it.
Do you think that we probably will see another rate cut, perhaps in the December meeting?
No, we can't afford a rate cut at the moment. All indications are that inflation is going to be very high in this country, and given what Labour is talking about, we don't find ourselves with hyperinflation as we've seen in other Latin American countries, because that will hurt consumers hugely.